How are you doing, green industry business leaders? This is episode number 6 of the Green Industry Profits podcast, where we talk about how green industry companies can grow in a profitable way. In today's episode, we had a conversation with Wesley Addington of Wesley's Landscape and Lawn Care. We dive into the processes he has within his company, reaching his goal of 10 million in sales at 10% net profit, his non-productive time goals for the team, his recruiting and onboarding approach, and much more. And before we dive into this episode, just a quick note that this podcast is brought to you by Cycle CPA, a remote accounting firm that works specifically with green industry businesses. For more information, go to cyclecpa.com. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, everyone. So looking forward to this episode here with Wesley Addington of Wesley's Landscape and Lawn Care. And I think everyone's going to have a lot to learn from Wesley's journey and what he's been able to build as well. Pretty amazing stuff. So thanks for joining us here, Wesley.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. It's an honor and it's my first podcast, so hopefully all goes well, right?
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I guess to start off, Wesley, how did you decide to get into the green industry?
Geez, I've been in this. This is really all I know. I've did this since I was 11. Started with the garage sale push mower and my little lawn boy, and continue to grow. And went through the school of hard knocks. So didn't go to college. I got right out of high school, and I did do a 6-year stint in the military. But I was National Guard, so I was able to be home and still run the business. Weekend warrior. But just kept growing, kept adding crews, kept adding people, kept going, and now we're touching close to 9 million or 8.5. So things are good, things are fun. I'm still learning every day.
Very nice, Wesley. And even your experience with the National Guard, do you feel that you were able to pick up on anything there that kind of helped you when it came to running the company?
Absolutely. I wouldn't change that for the world. I think, the leadership qualities and leadership of being able to stand in front of, 100 and some soldiers and similar to employees, if you stand in front of folks with leadership qualities, speaking, holding people accountable. It's a little different in the military. They can't quit. So, so
Yeah.
it's a little funner in the military because you can actually tell them what you think with an unfiltered mouth. And so leadership, organizational skills, just down to like what we talk a lot about in our industry is the color coding of crews and the organizational structure of tools and supplies and mechanic stuff. And I think military helped in a big way and all that, just to organize it all.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's a lot of younger professionals getting into the field without a lot of other experience, right? And I feel that having that kind of experience, like you had mentioned, helping with the leadership, holding people accountable, I think stuff like that helps to propel companies once they do start, and having that past experience. So
I would agree.
That's awesome, and thank you for your service as well. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
and then so I know you had mentioned right now, the company's around nine million revenue. And how long has the business been around?
I incorporated in 1999, so I'm not great at math. So whatever that is, 20 some years probably.
Yeah, roughly 25-ish. And
25-ish.
yeah, no, that's some great growth there. And then as for kind of like the evolution of really what that looked like, starting from when you started, in regard to just growing, what did you see as kind of maybe some of the toughest points of that journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I look at it, and I think all there's phases of business, right? And I'm still learning, what phase we're in right now and how to adjust fire for that. And I think my memory serves me as like under 1 million is tough. That's probably the grueling years, and 100% open and candidness of, I drive to work every morning 4 a.m. and I'd kind of be weeping and crying like my raw self of just this is the grind, and that was the tough years because I'd get under the mowers at 4:30 in the morning when I get to work and sharpen blades and get the crews all ready and load the trucks and trailers. And of course, you're still in that controlling phase of like, I want to control everything. So I was the guy doing it all or trying to do it all and stay up till midnight doing invoicing. And so lack of sleep, probably I was deprived of sleep. I feel like once we hit closer or got closer to 1 million, well, and we didn't make any money back then either. So it was dump it all back into the business. And, I think I met my wife about that time frame, and she probed me to start making money, and or get out of it and do something else. And it's all I loved, and my passion was this, and it's all I knew. So something happened there. I think it was between my wife and a God thing that both, kicked it into gear. And from there, it was, a little bit more into building systems and creating processes and procedures and handbooks and all that stuff that we're still working on today. But, we're just critiquing it today and not reinventing it. And back then it was easier to get 3 or 4 people's handbooks and then make our own out of that, and then start to live and die by, the core values and the mission statements and all those things. And not a lot of that made sense back then, but once I started to put it together, I feel like the company started to evolve into a second million and then a third million. And so you need those foundational pieces in place. So all that helped. And I think under 1 million, and then 1 to 5 is kind of a phase, and then now we're into the 5 to 10, I will call us. And I don't know how true that is, but I just feel like we're in that phase of like, now I'm 8 to 9 million, and I'm trying to put systems and processes and people into place for the 10 million, and what's 10 plus look like. So I think we're always trying to build and evolve and change, and be humble enough to say, yeah, I messed that one up. Let's try it this way and try it a different way, and have a good team around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would agree, Wesley. I think a lot of companies get stuck in that, maybe high 6 figures in revenue range, maybe a little bit even over the 7 figure range. And you've been able to well surpass that. Now, going back to just the company in general. So what services do you currently provide within the company, service lines?
Sure, we're a full service company. We have 12 landscape hardscape crews. Essentially 3 or 4 of those are what we say are full hardscape crews, building outdoor patios, outdoor living spaces, the fireplaces, fire pits, outdoor structures, that type of stuff. The remainder are just what we call our mulch crews, our landscape crews, softscapes. We have 14 maintenance crews. We run 2-man crews, little F-150 and a little mower trailer, and it's kind of our low entry way of getting into the continually growing part of it is 14 maintenance crews. Now, maintenance, we do a little differently. We don't just mow and go. We transitioned about 5 or 6 years ago to what we call manicure crews, and that's pull the weeds every week, edge the sidewalks and curbs, as well as mow the grass. And we're a little more of what I would say, I like to call it a boutique. Sounds kind of weird, but we like to do everything for the client that we take care of. So we won't just mow you. We don't just mulch you. If we're going to take you on as an account, we take you on mowing, fertilizing, mulching, spring, fall cleanups, leaf removals, if that's a case. So we want to be the only person on the property. We do irrigation as well, but we subcontract that all out. So we're full encompassing. We take care of the whole property outdoors.
Very nice. And did it always look like that from when you had started the company? Were you always focused on, even earlier on, both the hardscape, landscape installs plus the maintenance?
Of course I started mowing. So mowing, I think it's one of those necessary evils in business. We did mowing for a lot of years. I ended up hiring my best friend that worked at Scott's at the time to help start the fertilizing side of the business. He ended up quitting because we only had 60 clients, and I had him go mulch the remainder of the week. And he wasn't a mulching type; he was more of a fertilizing type. So I learned the school of hard knocks of losing. Well, we're still best friends, so I didn't lose a friend, but at least I lost that portion of business at first, and then we had to start it all over and regrow it, and I had to get licensed for it myself, and learned a lot there in the early years. Um, I I feel like, you got, if you're going to take care of the mowing, part of having a successful mowing business is healthy turf, and it doesn't dry out. So you got to do irrigation. You want to do fertilizing. So it's one of those, I think, necessary evils. We fight that battle here in Indiana, with snow removal. Snow removal's terrible here. It rarely snows, but for a lot of our homeowners associations and commercial properties, we have to do snow removal.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those, I'd love to get out of it. I don't love working at nighttime. I'm a morning guy, but to get the whole contract and to have a couple $100,000 contracts, you got to do the snow as well. So it's one of those necessary evils. So we do snow
Absolutely.
as well. I don't like snow. I don't love it, but it's nice money in the winter, but it's just unpredictable, right? So it's tough to,
Absolutely.
for around here anyway.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned so you sub out irrigation.
Yep.
Can you walk me through that thought process in regard to why you sub out something like that versus maybe why you have handle some of the services more internal?
Yeah, that's a great question. We thought about bringing it in-house for a number of years. Actually, I hired a really good irrigation guy many years ago. Um, his passion, his heart was in irrigation. We did not do irrigation at the time, so I stuck him on a fertilizing machine, said, "You fertilize for a year or two, let us wrap our minds around this." And like majority of new employees, they have ideas and thoughts, and he thought the idea of irrigation was good, and I wasn't opposed to it. So essentially, 2 years passed. Um, we got into irrigation, meaning we set a system up around it. We got our software programmed with all the parts and this and that. We advertised for it, and we picked up 50 or 60 clients. And I thought, okay, we're off to the races. Let's get this going. And then I think it was on April Fool's Day, he came in my office and quit. So
Wow.
then we were kind of stranded because no one else knew irrigation. Um, that spun off into a good friends of mine in the landscape industry, um, at the Indianapolis Landscape Association, which I'm a board member of an irrigation only company that I said, "Hey, you want 50, 60 clients?" And he's like, "Heck yeah." So we spun off into that, and the relationship grew, and then we kept growing, and now we give them, a couple $100,000 a year in just irrigation. I've considered bringing it back in-house to try to make a little bit more money, but again, the size that we are now, to bring that into our software and to hire for it, and I certainly don't want to hire one person only now, which are,
Yeah.
irrigation guys are expensive now. Around us, they want 90 to $100,000 a year, and I can't just hire one because I don't want to be vulnerable again.
Yeah.
So, and I can't afford to hire two. So it's easier just to keep subbing it out. And, for years we didn't make any money on our sub. We just passed it on to the client. But now we're, starting to mark it up 8 to 10% a year. So we're making a little bit of money, which covers the cost of, our doing business and us paperwork inside the office, keeping track of it. I feel like some of my main job is to go around and help people understand their clocks in irrigation. So I still do a
Yeah.
lot irrigation related. I just save the clients that trip fee from the irrigation companies,
Yeah.
because I care about their turf and want their grass to look good and be their full encompass company.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff. And I think that's a great point in regard to maybe your hesitation now to take it internally is because you don't really have redundancies in that department, which I think even going back to the beginning of the conversation, Wesley, when you mentioned, being a smaller company, you were the one doing a lot of the work. Whereas now, being larger, some might see that as, okay, yes, there's a lot more going on, but at the same time, you probably have a lot of different redundancies and a lot of people in place where if someone does leave, right, it's not like you're going to have to most likely hop into the field again.
Sure,
So,
sure. I think my job, we have 84 people right now on staff, and I think a lot of my main sole job as CEO is culture, making sure everyone's communicating, making sure systems and procedures are in place, continually building on those. Um, and I think it's easy to try to be the jack of all trades. Um, and I think there is some importance in growing the business is to be great at something instead of trying to be good at everything. Um, and I still to this day we hire people and they're like, we should start pools and we should install pools because there's a couple landscape companies around our area that are starting to do pool installation. And I say, you know what, I'd rather be great at what we do versus
Yeah,
trying to get into a bunch of other things. And I'm not saying that will never happen. I'm just saying it would. It's not our niche, and our niche is manicuring properties and mulching and taking care of our current clients. And until I feel like we maximize that, then I don't see there's a reason to start looking outside the walls of what we do. And once we
absolutely.
perfect it, then we can start to look. But I think it's a long way till perfection, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really interesting how, because there's a lot of companies that would see your company as almost like the end goal. And for you to say that you're still looking to perfect things, I think is pretty cool, right? Because I think
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I think there's so much opportunity out there, even as you mentioned, just within the service lines that you're already providing. So
yeah.
that's that's great. And so I know you mentioned 84 people, and then you had mentioned roughly 12 landscape and hardscape crews, 14 maintenance crews. When you look at one crew, or maybe however you kind of break down your business model, do you expect them to bring in a certain amount of revenue per crew, or profitability, or how do you measure stuff like that?
um, I'm not very good at numbers and math. Why I would highly recommend Cycle CPA. Um, we have never broken it down. I think at certain points, and I would put a little plug in for the NALP and the grow groups and the Jeffrey Scotts and all those guys. I try to go to all those groups and
Yeah,
spend the money on employees to go and those type of things, because you start to hear metrics and KPIs that are important to them, which in turn says, hey, I should be tracking that, and
yeah,
that EBITDA and all those things that are important. You just don't know exactly what they are. And
yeah,
I'm still learning those every day because I'm not a CPA or an accountant of mindset at all. I'm better with a shovel than I'm better I'm not very great behind the computer and whatnot. And I guess I've got by um, pretty good, but I don't know. We have KPIs. Our KPIs are, we use Aspire software. It's a giant and expensive software, but it's amazing for our business. And our KPIs are gross margins, service calls, um, non-productive time, and the things that really hurt us are is non-productive time. We try to watch that like a hawk. Over time, we try to watch that like a hawk. Um, so I don't know per crew and per division. We don't break those down very often where they're not in the forefront of my mind, but I know
sure,
on a daily we're constantly thinking gross margins, and I've got my team for the first time ever working because of Aspire. We can have them working on gross margins
sure,
and not necessarily seeing the whole open book concept.
yeah,
Um, but they're playing their game, and I think once you open the door to employees knowing what the win is, what their Super Bowl is, they really start to shine and play.
yeah,
And for so many years, I'd say most of my career, and up until 3 years, 5 years ago, when we got Aspire, no one knew what the Super Bowl was. No one knew what a win looked like. And I think painting that picture for them and putting it in number format for them, they really start to play and thrive, and starts to weed out the bad pretty easily because they don't want to play, or they obviously lose. Then you have something to hold them accountable to and say, well, you missed the mark. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
yeah, yeah,
I think
absolutely,
we're
yeah. And different companies have different numbers that are tracked, and I think so. I would like to start with the non-productive time.
yeah.
Um, do you have a specific goal for that for, for the
Yeah, we
team?
do. We do our landscape crews and maintenance crews are 20%, 20%. I don't know of something. I know it's less than 20%, which is drive times expected, right? And so we give them that 20% of grace. If it's over that, then we start to harp on them. Um, and I think our fur crews are set at 30, just because they have more prep time every job. They get to pour fertilizer in the hopper, and they have more drive time to go to sporadic yards.
Sure.
So we just track that in the sense of, try to make money while you're clocked into the job and be accurate at it, and trying to get 84 people playing that game, and a lot of Hispanics. So to try to teach them that, it was a process that first couple years to get them playing the game and actually punching in and punching out to the job, and when to punch in and when to punch out. I mean, is it from leaving the gate in the morning, or is it when you get to the job site, clock it, so
Yeah.
learning what we track as non-productive time and trying to explain that and understand that by everyone is challenging, but I think it's paid volumes, because now we can print reports and show them on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, how they're doing on those jobs, if they're meeting times, if not meeting times. And we're also, we're still adjusting times for them. If there's a consistency 3 times in a row or 4 times in a row that they're not hitting the mark, we may give them a little more. We try not to tell them that, because every job they're going to want more time, right? Everyone does.
Yeah.
But if there's a consistency of, say, we mulched the property 3 years in a row and we've went over time, we're going to bump that time up for them next year. Maybe charge the client a little bit more, but really we focus on the time. I think our business is time. We sell time for a living. Time is money. So it's how do we harness that and get them all to play that game?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point, kind of being reasonable, because yeah, you can hold the team accountable to certain metrics, but you also have to apply that thought of, okay, maybe this job is actually taking this long,
You're
so,
right.
and if you weren't to do stuff like that, then the team might get discouraged, or they
Yeah.
may feel that their goals are not as realistic. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a very underestimated aspect when you're trying to hold the team accountable, is also listening and kind of seeing, okay, what is this a
Right.
fair thing that we're holding accountable to?
And we may try to send a different crew there and see if they can do it, beat the time or get the time. So and maybe that works. Maybe we get a different crew there and they kill it. And so we know the time's okay. But if we send
Yeah.
another crew or a new crew there, or maybe our best crew, and they still can't hit the time, then we've got some work to do internally and try to adjust that for them so their morale stays high and they can still see a win, what a win looks like. And maybe it's just the salespeople quoted it under time and we need to do some adjustments. So we're not perfect by any means. So we're always adjusting and shifting and changing. I think you have to. I don't think there's a
Absolutely.
right or wrong way in this business. It's a continued evolution of change and adjustment.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, Wesley. Um, in regard to having another crew even try out, work on that specific property to see how they perform. I think
Yeah.
that can really shed some light onto, you know, even just the productivity of maybe, one crew versus the other as well. So
Yeah.
that's awesome stuff. And then as for gross margin, so do you have a specific target for that as well?
We do. We try to hit 50 to 55% on every job we touch. Um, that's a deep question to get
Yeah.
deep in all that. I could go on forever probably about gross margin. But our goal is, and we review those weekly with every crew, every staff member, how everyone's done. Um, we have what we call a P&L meeting every Wednesday to go over the last 7 days. So everyone's on the same page. I mean, majority of the jobs we hit that, but there's quite a few that we missed the mark too on. So those are the ones we spend time on. So those meetings are, somewhat, I would say, downing, if you will, because we really focus on the ones we didn't hit 50%. So
Yeah.
some of the staff is like, this meeting's demoralizing but I think, in order to improve, you got to look at the negatives or the
Yeah.
downfalls to be able to turn that into a win. So
Yeah.
I think there's a right way and wrong way to approach that, because, I don't go in yelling and screaming and throwing clipboards and whatnot.
Yeah.
I would have in the military because they can't quit. But I think there's a way to try to get everyone on the same page of like, hey, we're all trying to win here. We're all trying to get better. Let's look at what we didn't do great on to try to improve upon so we can win next time. And every week we look at those and try to hit that 55% mark. And we don't spend as much time on the 65% ones. We look at the top 10 and say, why didn't we hit the mark on these? And
Yeah.
then, it could be valid. It could be, the truck broke down or the client came out and wanted extra stuff, and then we say, well, did you give it the salesperson to increase the price or give it the client to charge more? And so we talk about those kind of processes of what did we do wrong or what happened so we can fix it next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that with the entire team or just a crew leader typically?
Really that meeting is specifically for the sales team and the ops team, which is no crew people.
Okay,
It's just the supervisors that run the crews and the sales team, which we have four salespeople, because they're the ones quoting the work. And then the supervisors are in charge to make sure they hit the
sure.
50%. So there's no crew or field people. It's just the supervisors, managers, and sales team,
Okay, awesome.
and
And
myself.
very nice. And then as for net profit margin,
Yep.
do you have a specific goal for that as well?
I do. Never hit it. We try to hit 10% every year and in total net profit. I've never hit 10% in business. We've got up to 8.5 before, which I still think is a fairly comfortable, but then all these national associations I've been part of, accountability groups. There's guys hitting the 10 to 15, and of course I'd love to I desire that, but right now I think I've set my sights on 10 million, 10%. So double 10 is what we call it around here, and I'm trying to butter everyone up to buy into that and agree to that and try to work towards that. And I've got my office staff on board with that to try to work on, what can we do pricing structure wise. I've got my ops team playing the game with gross margins to be able to hit the 10%. And so we're all kind of starting to push the wheel down the road. So now we got to try to figure out how to hit it and not spend as much and do more with less, I guess, and or make more and do with less, So,
Absolutely.
but I still think 8 to 9% to me is a fair number. We can still grow. We still have room to grow, and but I'd love to hit 10 before I kick the bucket or retire, or
Yeah.
and move on.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. Yeah, no, that's definitely above industry averages. So that's a great goal. Now, when it comes to building a team, uh, any any tips or advice for people out there that are trying to, scale their landscape company in regard to just finding good help and, retaining some top talent as well?
Yeah. Hire slow, fire fast. I think that's a fairly common statement. But there that gets deeper into if you're hiring slow, then are you doing it right? I'll give you an example of we're $8.5 million company, and we used to, if you're breathing, we used to hire you and throw you in the truck the next day. No training, no onboarding, no nothing. And last year we hired an additional HR guy that is helpful with to he says I'm helpful with all Wes's ideas because I come up with all kinds of ideas. And I think as an owner, we know what it takes, we know what to do, we just can't implement it
Yeah.
or we don't have the wherewithal. And so I had an idea for Wesley University, and it was an idea I got 10 years ago from one of the shows I went to or associations. Um, but it never took off, and I didn't have the time to sit down and write up or the knowledge. I contribute this not going to college. I don't know syllables and I don't know curriculums, and I don't play in that world, so that's not my strong suit. So he's really good at all that. So I said I want to start this training process. So we started to, and keep in mind we're still talking hiring only. We started to filter guys from Indeed and the Latino radios and all the people coming in. We started to funnel out what's a good employee, what's best case scenario, what's medium, and what's low. And low, we're not going to hire unless we're extremely desperate for employees. But we try
Mhm.
to hit that high mark. And if we do hit the high mark, then what do we do with them to get them prepared? And what would we want to feel like if we were getting hired? So we set up a full day onboarding course. It's a video that we created internally, and luckily he's Hispanic too, so he was able to do it in Spanish. So we sit him down and give him the full onboarding of who we are, what we're about, where we came from, just to give them a better understanding of what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
And we want them to have that knowledge. And then we take them out and run them through a training day. It's a half day, run mowers, learn how to weed eat, learn how to trim, because we got into where we used to hire bodies and then the next day they'd quit because they're like, I didn't know we were going to do that today. And it's like, well, you applied for this mowing job and you didn't think you were going to mow. So it's a self-reflection of like, what are we doing wrong? And then trying to adapt to that. So now we've had success and I think 12 people we've graduated from the university so far. And it's simple. It's nothing like, it's a day sitting in front of a video and a day out in the field with trainers out helping, our supervisors out helping them, making sure they understand. Plus we're critiquing them and saying, this guy's pretty good. Let's send him with M2 maintenance crew too, and trying to feel them out where they would best fit in the company. And at least from then, day one, they know when they park their car, they know to put their safety vest on, they know what to do or what crew they're going to, what equipment locker they're going to. They're more well equipped. So I say hire slow, with meaning that put the systems and processes into what it would look like to hire a good person, and fire quick. I think we never fire as quick as we should, but we do the 1, 2, 3 program now where, we'll give you a verbal, then we'll give you a write up, and then we'll say, hey, it's time to part ways. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, my friend and colleague in the business, Frank Mariani, saying, I love you, but you just can't work here anymore, and I don't think there's any hard feelings with that. Is some people fit and some people don't, and not being scared to let that person go and looking for better. I tell my staff all the time, if you want to let someone go, make sure you have the replacement in place. So think through that process before you fire fast, I would say. Make sure you
Yeah.
have that next person in line. So you're not the guy out there on the mower, or you're not the guy out there with the shovel, because you're better as a owner to be off the crew and managing the company and not working in the company,
Yeah.
and so, or working on the company and not in the company. So I don't know if that's a good answer or
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah. No,
I
no,
don't remember the
absolutely.
question now.
And yeah, no, and I think that you touched on not only you know, just the initial aspect of recruiting, but also the onboarding experience.
Yeah,
Having a huge uh, really say in regard to how well that employee really, kind of what their first impression is of the
yeah.
company.
I
So
think that came from the military for me. They used to have a manual for everything in the military, and I think the military is hundreds of years old, right? So they've had time to put those processes into places. And oftentimes, if you're a real small company, it could just be a handshake and saying you're hired, but then walking them around the yard and showing them what piece of equipment they're going to touch, and maybe it's, hey, run this mower up on the trailer and that's what you're going to do in the mornings, and just to give them a little bit more wherewithal of like saying, okay, I got this, I can handle this, and they feel day one they come in with some more confidence than they would if you didn't do any of that, so
yeah,
it's just adjusting to what you think they would like to do or like to get better at.
absolutely. And for the processes, Wesley, do you keep that on the computer? Do you have a binder that has some of those processes and SOPs, or is it something that you just verbally communicate with some of your staff?
It's all on the computer. I think they made a Word doc or an Excel, it's Word or Excel document. So when we hire someone, they watch the video and then they go out with the trainer, and the trainer has a checklist of, hey, he showed them all these things to do. And maybe it's mow in a straight line. I mean, it's all basic, very general, basic stuff. But we've turned a couple people away because they didn't make the training, they didn't meet the training day, and they said this probably isn't going to be a perfect fit. And it's all very basic, general stuff, and um, but it's all, we just Word doc, Excel, just create stuff and then adjust it, again, back to, we're all learning and we're still learning, and we're saying, is this too hard? Is this too easy? Is this too, what can we do next time to make it better? And, I think the second day we did the university, we had brought in 5 guys, and the trainer had so many things to do, so we forgot to tell him he was doing a training that day. So he's our lot guy, our lot supervisor too. So he had trucks to load and things to go pick up, and he didn't have time. So you could tell that. So I think we learned our lesson there of just saying, hey, let's put these on one day a week, a scheduled day, so everyone in the company knows we're doing these training days, and we can prepare and be planned for and critique better and be all in for that particular candidate instead of spread thin and we're all over the place. So it's that focus time. So we're still learning and trying to make it greater and bigger. And one day I'd like to, do a week training onboarding, which is expensive, but I think it will pay dividends in the long run and keep employees. And then I think there's something to be said with continually working with your existing people too. What are we doing for them as well? And we try to do a Tuesday tailgate meeting every Tuesday. We call it Tuesday tailgate every Tuesday morning. We huddle up with our whole team out back and get in a big circle and train on something. And we came up with 50 topics, and we usually have 43 week season here in Indiana before we shut down in the winter and go into snow mode and maintenance mode or mechanic mode. And we go over a topic once a week, and we try to make it fun. I bought the old, safety cone hat, and I wear that one day. And a lot of the supervisors will put on, how do you plant a plant? How do you plant a tree? How do you back up a trailer? And we all laugh at each other and try to have fun with it and try to have a different person speak each week. So it's not redundant, because we used to do that. It used to be Wes get out there and tells us what we do bad and what we do wrong, and we try not to make it about that. We try to make it fun for everyone.
No, awesome stuff. And no, I think it's a lot of those soft skills aspects is why, I don't think companies continue to scale even to that seven-figure, eight-figure mark because of maybe how well they do the work in the field. I think a lot of it becomes, some of the soft skills aspects and, working with the team, building the team and stuff like that, which it seems like you not only excel at, but you have certain processes already set in place for a lot of stuff as well. So
we're learning as we go. We're continually working on it.
So I know you had mentioned that pretty exciting goal of the 10 million, 10% net profit. Any other goals, or basically, even if you want to share a little bit of the strategy of how you're going to get there?
We as bad as it sounds, we all kind of everyone stayed home and spent money, and at least around us, we're in a real affluent area, just north of Indianapolis. And I feel like we used to quote, and quoting meant we type it up on the computer and email it to them, and they said, when can you start, no matter what the cost was. So to a degree, I felt like we're spoiled, and this is the first year I got back in front of my sales team. We have weekly sales meetings too with the sales team of what their KPIs are and what their growth strategies are. And I said, I feel like this is back in the early 2000s when I started the business, when we used to have to print that quote out and go sit down in the kitchen and talk about why Wesley's, why are we better and why we good, and really sell it versus just be an order taker, and follow up with phone calls and and ask for the sale, and all those things, which the last 5 years we never really had to do, is just send the quote out and schedule it the next day because they'd approve. So I think sales is slowing down as a whole for us anyway. So we're changing our sales strategies now of to call right after we email and make sure they got it and so sales, I feel like sales drives all, right? Is the more you sell and sell more and you'll figure it out. So I think sales drives us. I'm doing more marketing than I've did in the last 10 years. I used to spend so much money on marketing, and when I didn't really have it, but I wanted to grow the business and the brand, and then I quit. I was just like, we don't need this, and we're just growing by word of mouth and just naturally growing, and we have for the last 10 years, I'd say. But now this year, I've dumped a lot of money into marketing, and I would say more scalpel marketing to specific neighborhoods and specific clientele. But I think that's important too. Growing is just trying to get the revenue up, but also we're trying to get our mechanics on the same page. We're starting to implement the Aspire equipment modular and trying to get tracking methods into that, and preventative maintenance methods, so we're not spending, I'm gonna call it stupid money, just waiting for things to break and then just fixing it, versus we could have caught that, last year or last winter, we could have fixed it cheaper. And trying to just tighten up our ship on, gross margins.
In regard to any other comments or any other advice that you'd like to share with the community as we kind of wrap things up here?
Yeah, I'll wrap up with industry associations. I've been president of the Indianapolis Landscape Association, and been on that board 15 years. I think that's a band of brothers that and I don't know if everyone, I hear a lot of times of other areas aren't like this area. But I think being in associations, being affiliated with NALP, and even if you don't know those people and it's intimidating to go, and you glean a lot off of those things for your own business. I would say you're going to come home with a laundry list of notes to improve your business on. You can't do that overnight. So start just chipping away at it. And that's what I used to do, is go to all the industry events. But going to and getting involved with your local industry associations, and going to at least one or two industry NALP or one of them out there a year. I think you're going to get a lot of information and glean a lot from that.
Very nice. And what's the best way people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I think anytime anyone needs anything, feel free to email me, Wesley at wesley'slandscape.com. Of course, wesley'slandscape.com is my web address. You can look us up on the web and email me anytime.
Very nice, Wesley. Thank you very much for hopping on here. And I hope everyone was taking notes as well, because a lot of stuff to learn. And thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone. See you.